She looked like the kind of person power loves to crush. A night shift ER nurse in wrinkled scrubs coffee trembling in her hand alone under the sickly buzz of a desert gas station. When Deputy Ryan Kellogg boxed her car in, he saw an easy win. But what if the woman in cuffs isn't helpless, just disciplined? What if the calm on her face isn't fear, but training? This story is different because it isn't just about one bad stop. It's about the moment a small-town bully meets a past he can't intimidate, and a system that thought no one would ever call it out. If you've ever felt powerless in front of a badge, stay with me. Because in 60 seconds, one phone call will change everything. Like the video and comment where you're watching from. That calm on Emily Carter's face was not an accident. It was something practiced, something earned, something that had been carved into her long before a badge and a pair of handcuffs tried to define her. Earlier that evening, St. Agnes Regional did what it always did when the sun went down. It swallowed people whole. The emergency department lived under fluorescent light that never warmed anything. The air smelled like antiseptic and old coffee, and the faint metallic bite of blood that clung to the seams of scrubs no matter how many times you washed them. At the nurse's station, the phone rang with the kind of urgency that made your shoulders tighten before you even answered. Charge nurse Denise Wallace held the receiver to her ear, eyes already scanning the board. She did not ask if they had space. She did not ask if they had staff. She just nodded like the universe was reasonable. "We got an MVC inbound," she said, covering the mouthpiece with her palm. 2 vehicles. 1 ejection. 2 minutes. Emily stepped away from the med cart without looking up from the chart she had been updating. Her pen clicked once, quiet and final. She set it down, washed her hands, and pulled gloves with a snap that sounded like a starting gun. Trauma. 1, she said. Her voice did not rise. It did not shake. "Get the warmer on. Prep blood. I want 2 large bore lines ready." A new nurse nearby hesitated with a roll of tape in her fingers, eyes wide. The girl looked maybe 24, still soft around the edges in a place that sanded people down. Emily leaned in just enough for the girl to hear her without anyone else noticing. "Breathe through your nose," Emily said. "It keeps your hands steady." The doors burst open, and the paramedics rolled in wheels, squealing, their faces lit by adrenaline and exhaustion. The patient was a man in his 30s with road grit embedded in his skin, breath coming shallow and fast, a chest that moved like it was arguing with itself about whether to keep going. "Pressure is tanking," the lead medic said. "We lost his radial. Possible internal bleed." Emily's eyes tracked the monitor, the skin tone, the way his jaw clenched on each inhale. She did not waste time asking for permission to act. "On my count," she said, and her hands were already at work, fingers finding veins by feel. 1, 2. A needle slid in. Blood flashed. She anchored the line. Another nurse handed her tubing, and Emily's hands moved with the calm certainty of someone building something in a storm. "Type and cross is already ordered," Denise said. Emily nodded once. "Good. Call radiology. I want a fast scan as soon as we can move him." The man's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and frightened, searching for an answer that could be held. "Hey, Emily," said, lowering her face into his field of view. "Look at me. You're here. Stay here." His lips trembled. "Am I dying?" Emily did not lie. She also did not surrender the room to fear. "You're hurt," she said. "We're working. Keep breathing with me." The monitor beeped like a metronome that could speed up or slow down depending on the whims of fate. Someone called out a number. Someone else swore under their breath. The room had the familiar chaos of people trying to save someone faster than time could take him. Emily's voice stayed level. "More pressure on that site. Keep your hand there. Do not move it." A young resident fumbled a clamp. Emily did not correct him with embarrassment. She corrected him with clarity. "Rotate your wrist," she said. "Yes, like that." The resident looked at her surprised. "How did you see that?" Emily's eyes did not leave the patient. "You learn where people hesitate," she said. Hours passed like that. not as a smooth timeline, but as a series of rooms that demanded her whole attention. A toddler with a fever so high his skin burned under her palm. An elderly woman whose breath sounded like wet paper tearing. A man who came in smelling of gasoline and regret his hands shaking as he tried to explain that he had not meant to fall asleep at the wheel. At 10:30, the hospital's understaffing showed its teeth. 2 nurses called out sick. 1 tech got sent upstairs to cover another unit. The waiting room filled with people holding pain the way you hold a secret quiet. At first, then louder when you realize no one is coming fast enough. Denise leaned over the board again, jaw tight. "We are drowning." Emily was washing her hands for the 100th time. The skin across her knuckles was cracked from sanitizer. She dried them, then pulled another pair of gloves. "We keep moving," Emily said. Denise's eyes softened for a fraction of a second. "You ever get tired, Carter?" Emily's mouth curved, not quite a smile. "All the time." Could have fooled me. Emily looked past her toward a trauma bay where a monitor alarm chirped in a sharp, insistent rhythm. "Panic doesn't help," she said, and then she was already walking. Near midnight, a child with pneumonia came in, carried by a father who looked like he had not slept in days. The kid's small ribs pulled in with each breath like his body was trying to inhale through a straw. His mother stood at the door, fingers clenched around a paper bag with an inhaler inside that was nearly empty. "I tried to get the prescription," the father said, voice breaking. "They said the insurance didn't cover it." Emily glanced at the chart, then at the kid's lips, slightly blue at the edges. A doctor began to speak about protocol and billing, and the way medicine became a maze when you had no money. Emily stepped close to the father. "We're going to treat him," she said, "right now." The father's eyes filled. "How much is it going to cost?" Emily's throat tightened just for a moment. She kept her face steady anyway. "We're going to get him breathing first," she said. "We'll talk after." She placed the mask over the child's face and watched his chest rise and fall, slow at first, then more, even as the medication did what it was supposed to do. The mother sank into a chair with her head in her hands. The father kept looking at Emily like she was the only solid thing in a room full of shifting ground. "You're doing good," Emily told him. "Keep your hand on his leg. He needs to feel you." A little after 1, an elderly man coded. It started with a monitor that changed its mind, a line that went jagged, a pulse that disappeared beneath Emily's fingers like it had been pulled away. The room tightened. A tech called out the rhythm. Someone started compressions, the doctor's voice sharp and controlled. Emily stood at the head of the bed and watched the man's face, the slackness that meant the body had taken a step toward leaving. "Push harder," she said to the person doing compressions. "You're not deep enough." The nurse's face reddened, sweat shining across her forehead. She nodded and pushed with more force as if she could shove life back through bone. "Epi," the doctor said. Emily took the syringe, checked it, then pushed the medication with the smooth steadiness of someone placing a bet she refused to lose. Again, the doctor said, "We're not done." The man's heart stopped twice. Twice they fought it back. When the monitor finally steadied into a rhythm that held, the room exhaled like it had been holding its breath for an hour. The nurse doing compressions leaned against the wall, shaking. Emily peeled off her gloves, tossed them into the bin, and washed her hands again. Her fingers trembled slightly as she turned off the faucet. The trembling stopped when she curled her hand into a fist, not out of anger, but out of control. A voice behind her, "Carter." It was Mia, one of the night nurses, hair pulled back in a messy bun, fatigue carved into her face. "You're still standing," Mia said. Emily reached for a paper towel. "So are you." Mia watched her closely. Not the way people watch a coworker, but the way you watch someone who you suspect is carrying something heavy alone. "You going straight home?" Mia asked. Emily nodded. "If nothing else blows up." Mia gave a quiet laugh that held no humor. "It always blows up." Emily's eyes flicked toward the board. A new name had appeared. A triage note in bright red. Chest pain. Another room. Another fight. "Go," Mia said, like she knew Emily would keep going until someone physically stopped her. Emily went. By the time the clock crawled past 2, St. Agnes Regional looked the way it always looked at the end of a brutal night. The floors were scuffed with footprints. The air held the tired hum of machines. The staff moved slower, but they still moved because this place did not pause just because people were human. Denise handed Emily a clipboard with a signature line. "You've been here 16 hours, she said. Emily signed. The pen shook once a tiny betrayal. Denise lowered her voice. "Go home." Emily pulled off her ID badge and rubbed the back of her neck. There was a dull ache living in her muscles now, the kind that settles in deep when you have been running on purpose for too long. At the staff exit, she paused with her hand on the door bar. The outside air pressed cold against the glass. She could see the parking lot lights pale and far apart like they were trying to keep darkness from touching the cars. Mia caught up behind her. "You sure you're okay to drive?" Emily looked at her. Her face softened in a way that never happened in the trauma bay. "I'm sure," Emily said. "I've done the road 100 times." Mia's gaze lingered. "Call me when you get home." Emily nodded. "I will." Outside, the night hit her like a physical thing. Not just cold, but wide. Nevada had a way of making you feel small even when you were standing still. The sky above the hospital was clear and hard stars scattered like thrown salt. She walked to her sedan, an older model with sun-faded paint and a faint rattle when the engine idled. She sat behind the wheel for a moment without starting it, hands resting on her thighs, eyes closed. In her head, she could still hear alarms. She could still see the child's chest rising under the mask. She could still feel the moment a pulse returned under her fingers, warm and stubborn. She started the car. The drive out of town did not take long. Silver Flats was the kind of place you could miss if you blinked. A handful of buildings, a diner, a grocery store that closed early, a sheriff's office with a flag that snapped in the wind. The hospital sat on the edge like a boundary marker, one last line of light before the desert began. She turned onto US Route 50 and let the road take her. The engine's hum became the only steady sound in her world. She rolled the window down a crack. Cold air poured in, carrying the smell of dust and sagebrush. It cleared the disinfectant from her lungs one breath at a time. The highway stretched ahead like a ribbon dropped across emptiness. No streetlights, just reflectors on the asphalt that flashed back at her headlights like a string of small eyes. The lines on the road created a kind of hypnosis. White, black, white, black. It was easy to disappear into it. Emily did not play music. She did not need noise. The quiet gave her space to process the things she refused to process in the hospital. Out here, she could breathe without anyone needing her for a moment. She thought about the father with the paper bag, about the question he asked that she could not answer cleanly. She thought about the way the elderly man's heart had fought to keep beating, like it resented the idea of stopping. She thought about the way Mia's voice sounded when she said, "Call me." Her gaslight clicked on somewhere past the last cluster of buildings. A soft, amber glow on the dashboard. Emily glanced at the gauge and watched the needle sit too close to empty. "Of course," she murmured. She had been through this before. The hospital was far from her place, and the road between was long enough to punish mistakes. There were stretches where you could drive half an hour without seeing another car. If your engine died out here, you waited. If your phone lost signal, you waited longer. She reached for her cup holder and found it empty. She had not had time to grab coffee on the way out. Her body had been running on adrenaline, and now the adrenaline was draining like water from a cracked cup. She needed fuel. She needed caffeine. She needed 5 minutes of light and then a bed. The only option on this stretch of road was a lonely station sitting near mile marker 112. Locals called it Juniper Wells, though there was no well and there were no junipers close enough to justify the name. It had 2 pumps, a small convenience store, and lighting that flickered in a way that made everything look slightly unreal. Emily guided her car off the highway and into the lot. The tires crunched over gravel. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed with a tired insistence. She parked near the pump and stepped out. The cold surprised her again. Her scrubs were thin. Wind slid through them like it had permission. She wrapped her arms around herself and stared at the store windows. Inside, a coffee machine glowed with a cheap warmth. As she walked toward the entrance, she noticed a sign bolted to the doorframe. It was weathered edges curled from sun and time. Sagebrush County Sheriff's Office, we keep you safe. The slogan stared back at her like a dare. Emily pushed through the glass door. A bell chimed overhead, thin and lonely. The clerk behind the counter looked up too fast, like he expected trouble every time the door opened. He was young, maybe 22, with tired eyes that did not match his age. His name tag said Josh. "Evening," he said. His voice carried that careful politeness people use when they have learned that the wrong tone can invite the wrong kind of attention. Emily walked to the coffee machine and poured a large cup. The liquid was dark and steaming bitter smell rising like a promise. She added cream without measuring and stirred with a plastic stick that bent under pressure. Josh watched her with cautious curiosity. "Long shift?" he asked. Emily looked at her hands. There was a faint smear of dried blood near her thumb that she must have missed when she washed. She rubbed it away. "Yeah," she said, "long." Josh nodded like he understood, like he had his own version of long nights in this place. "Coffee's fresh," he offered, and there was something almost apologetic in the way he said it, like he knew it was the only comfort he could provide. Emily brought the cup to the counter along with a bottle of water and a protein bar. She added a pack of gum without thinking. She handed Josh a card. While he rang her up, Emily glanced around the store. The shelves held chips, candy-cheap souvenirs with Nevada printed in bold letters. A small television above the counter played a late-night show with the sound off. The screen flashed laughter that did not reach the room. In the corner near the restroom doors, a security camera hung from the ceiling. Its little red light blinked steady, indifferent. Josh followed her gaze and then looked away. His shoulders tightened. Emily noticed. "Everything okay?" she asked, keeping her voice neutral. Josh swallowed. "Yeah," he said, "just, nights." Emily did not press. People here carried their own rules. She took her receipt and her coffee. "Thanks," she said. Josh nodded. "Drive safe." She pushed back outside. The wind met her again, and she tightened her grip on the cup. She walked to her pump and began fueling the smell of gasoline sharp in the cold air. The desert was quiet in a way that felt personal, like it was listening. A semi-truck passed on the highway, its sound low and rolling, then gone. Emily looked up at the sky. Stars scattered across blackness. Out here, the universe felt close enough to touch and still completely uninterested in what happened to anyone on the ground. The tank clicked full. She replaced the nozzle and took a sip of coffee. It burned her tongue. The bitterness hit her system like a slap, and she welcomed it. She turned toward her car. The keys were in her hand-metal teeth pressed into her palm. Her body wanted the driver's seat, the familiar steering wheel, the simple act of moving forward. That was when she heard an engine idling nearby. Not on the highway, in the lot. Emily's head turned slightly. Her eyes adjusted to the darker edge of the station's light. A cruiser sat back near the side of the building, where the fluorescent glare faded into shadow. She had not noticed it when she pulled in. It blended too well with the night. The driver's side door was still closed. No interior light. Just a shape waiting. Emily held still for a moment. The coffee cup warmed her fingers. The wind tugged at loose strands of hair that had escaped her tie. She felt the fatigue in her bones, the heavy kind that makes decisions slower. She also felt something else quieter, older. The awareness that some places were not safe simply because they were public. She walked to her car anyway. Not hurried, not slow, normal speed, the kind of normal that does not invite attention. Her keys jingled softly as she reached for the handle. The cruiser's lights exploded to life. Red and blue flooded the lot, slicing across the pumps, the storefront windows, the gravel under her shoes. Emily squinted against it, heart giving one hard beat against her ribs. A door opened. Boots hit the ground. The sound carried sharp and deliberate in the empty space. A man stepped into the light. He moved like someone who did not expect to be questioned. Emily turned her body slightly so her hands were visible. Coffee in one, keys in the other. She waited. The deputy approached without rushing, one hand resting near his belt. His face was set into a look that pretended to be boredom. His nameplate caught the light. Kellogg. He stopped close enough that Emily could smell tobacco and aftershave. His flashlight stayed pointed at her face longer than necessary. His voice came flat and cold, like it belonged to the badge more than the man. License and registration. Emily kept her shoulders relaxed and her hands where he could see them. Coffee in her left, keys pinched between two fingers in her right. She did not reach into her car until she was told to. She did not turn her back. She did not make sudden movements. It was not politeness. It was procedure, the kind that lived in muscle memory. License and registration, Deputy Kellogg repeated, as if the words were a door he could slam. Emily nodded once. My wallet's in my back pocket. Registration is in the glove box. Is there a reason you stopped me, Deputy? Kellogg's flashlight lingered on her face, then drifted down to her scrubs, slow and deliberate, like he was reading her for weaknesses. He did not answer the question. He did not give a name, a department greeting, a courtesy. His silence wasn't forgetfulness. It was a lesson. I'll do the talking, he said. You do the listening. Emily turned her head slightly, keeping the beam out of her eyes. She could see the reflection of red and blue pulsing in the convenience store window. Behind the glass, Josh stood stiffly near the register. His hands hovered over the counter like he did not know what to do with them. Emily spoke carefully. May I get my wallet? Kellogg watched her for a beat that felt longer than it needed to be. Then he flicked his chin. Slow. Emily set the coffee on the roof of her car with both hands visible. She reached back, drew her wallet out, and held it open with 2 fingers. She offered her license without stepping forward. Kellogg snatched it like he was pulling a thread from fabric. He held it under the flashlight and read her name out loud in a voice that made it sound like an accusation. Emily Carter. He looked up. His eyes were flat. Not tired, not alert. Flat like a screen that had stopped showing anything real. You live in Silver Flats? Yes. You work at St. Agnes? Yes. On nights? Yes. He said it like he was stacking evidence. He didn't ask how her shift was. He didn't say he hoped she drove safe. He didn't ask if she needed help. He used her answers like handles. Step away from the vehicle, he said. Emily's pulse rose once hard, then steadied. She moved exactly 1 pace back and stopped. Deputy, she said, keeping her voice even. I'm happy to cooperate. I just need to understand what's going on. Kellogg's mouth twitched almost a smile. You don't need to understand anything. Not tonight. He angled his body between her and the driver's seat. His flashlight cut across her windshield, her dashboard, the inside of her car. The beam stayed on her longer than it stayed on anything else. Hands where I can see them, he said. They are, Emily replied. That did it. The flash of irritation in his eyes lasted only a second, but she saw it. His expression sharpened like he had been waiting for a reason to turn the temperature up. Don't get cute, he said. Registration. It's in the glove box, Emily said. May I reach for it? Kellogg did not answer. He opened her passenger door himself. The air inside the car was warmer than the night, carrying the faint smell of disinfectant from her scrubs and the stale hint of energy drinks that lived in old cup holders. Kellogg leaned in and popped the glove box. Papers fluttered. Emily watched his hands. Big hands, sure hands, the hands of a man used to taking. He pushed aside her insurance card, her maintenance receipts, a folded sheet of paper with a handwritten grocery list. He pulled the registration out slowly, held it up like he had found something incriminating, then tossed it onto the passenger seat. He did not close the glove box. He reached deeper fingers digging under the compartment liner, searching for secret doors that did not exist. Emily's eyes went to the store window again. Josh had turned his head away, pretending to wipe the counter with a rag that was already clean. His shoulders were raised near his ears as if he could hide inside himself. Kellogg straightened, keeping his body close to the open door. "Step back farther." Emily did. 2 more paces. Gravel shifted under her shoes. Kellogg's flashlight swept her again, then the lot, then the highway, then back to her. He drew something from his pocket. A small metal tool. He used it to pry open the center console with a sharp, practiced jerk. Emily's breath stayed slow, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Controlled enough that the cold did not bite as deep. "Deputy," she said, "are you searching my vehicle?" He didn't look up. "You're acting nervous." "I've been working 16 hours, Emily said. "I'm tired." He finally turned his head, and his eyes narrowed like he was deciding whether to treat her exhaustion as truth or insult. Tired people make mistakes. He opened the console completely and rifled through it. Her hand sanitizer rolled. Her gum pack slid. A small bottle of ibuprofen clinked against the plastic wall. He found nothing. He kept going. He reached under her seat. He pressed his palm against the floor mat and lifted it. He ran his fingers along the edge where carpet met metal, searching for hidden compartments that belonged in movies. Emily stood still, hands at her sides, the night wind crawling into her sleeves. Her coffee sat on her roof, steam fading. Kellogg moved to the back seat and opened it. He grabbed her nursing bag by the strap and yanked. The bag hit the ground with a thud that sounded like something more personal than a bag should. The zipper split open. Its contents spilled across the gravel. A stethoscope, its tubing scuffed from use, bounced once. A blood pressure cuff landed hard. Pens rolled like tiny blue soldiers. A half-crushed granola bar slid out of its wrapper. A packet of saline flushes skittered toward the pump, catching under the metal base. Kellogg looked at the items as if they were props from a lie. "What's this?" he asked, picking up a saline flush and turning it in his fingers. "It's sterile saline," Emily said, "for IV lines." Kellogg's eyebrows lifted. "You carry medical supplies in your car." "I'm a nurse," Emily said. He snapped the flush back into the pile with a careless flick. "People carry drugs in bags like this, too." Emily's jaw tightened once. It did not show in her mouth. It showed in the way she swallowed and kept her face smooth. "Those are hospital supplies," she said. "You can call St. Agnes and confirm I'm employed there." Kellogg stepped closer, and his shadow swallowed her feet. "You telling me how to do my job?" "No," Emily said. "I'm giving you information." He smiled, then slow and unpleasant. "You want to play smart." Emily did not respond. Kellogg's flashlight beam moved up her body again. It paused at her hands, then her wrists, then her face. He kept it there, letting the light do the work of discomfort. "You got anything on you?" he asked. "No." "Any weapons?" "No." "Any pills that aren't yours?" "No." He moved around her, circling in a way that made the space feel smaller. The lot was open, but he carried an invisible fence with him. Emily turned her head slightly and kept him in her peripheral vision. "What's the reason for this stop?" she asked again, careful. Kellogg's smile vanished. "You're swerving." Emily blinked once. "I pulled straight into the lot." "You were swerving on the highway," he said, voice firm now as if repetition could create reality. "I saw it." Emily knew the words were bait. A story he could write down. A justification that lived on paper long after the truth evaporated. "I'd like to see the dash cam footage," she said, and the sentence came out before she could stop it. Kellogg's posture shifted. The hand near his belt tightened. "You don't get to demand anything." Emily's heart thumped a single hard beat. She felt the line she had stepped on. She did not step back verbally. She stepped back physically, one pace, palms open. "I'm not trying to be difficult," she said. "I'm trying to understand." Kellogg's voice dropped softer but sharper. "Here's what you need to understand. Out here, when I tell you to do something, you do it." A semi-truck passed on the highway, its sound rolling through the dark like thunder you could not see. The wind snapped at the flag on the sheriff's office billboard in Emily's mind, that bright promise about safety. The lot's fluorescent lights buzzed above them, flickering once briefly dimming, then returning with a sickly insistence. Kellogg stepped closer until Emily could smell him clearly. Tobacco, cheap aftershave, coffee that had been sitting too long. "You want to go home," he said, "right?" Emily held his gaze for half a second, then let it slide past him to the highway. "Yes." "Then you stop talking," Kellogg said. "And you do what you're told." Emily's fingers flexed once. She let them relax again. "Okay." Kellogg nodded, as if he had won something. Then he said, "Turn around." Emily's stomach tightened. She turned slow, keeping her movements calm. The cold air pressed against her back through thin scrubs. "Hands behind your back." Emily obeyed. She placed her hands together at her lower spine. The cuffs came out with a metallic jingle, a sound that carried a particular weight, a sound that made Josh flinch inside the store, even though he pretended not to be watching. Kellogg yanked Emily's wrists higher than necessary, forcing her shoulders back. The metal bit. The click of the ratchet echoed across the lot. Emily inhaled sharply through her nose, then let it out slowly. Pain was information. It was not permission to lose control. Kellogg leaned in close enough that his voice brushed her ear. "Now you're gonna listen." Emily kept her eyes on the dark strip of highway ahead. She could feel her pulse in her wrists where the cuffs pressed. She could feel her fingers cooling as circulation changed. She tested her range of motion, small and subtle, measuring what she could and could not do. Kellogg tugged her forward toward the cruiser. "Walk." Emily took measured steps. Gravel shifted under her shoes. The red and blue lights painted the world in harsh pulses, making everything look like it belonged to someone else. Josh stood behind the store window, his face pale. His hands were clenched around the edge of the counter so hard his knuckles looked white, even under fluorescent light. He met Emily's eyes for a split second. There was fear there, not for her only, for himself, for the act of being seen, seeing. Kellogg opened the back door of his cruiser and pushed Emily toward it. "Wait," Emily said, and her voice was still calm, still controlled. Kellogg paused. "What?" "I need my coffee," she said. It sounded ridiculous in the night air, and she knew it. She also knew she needed to speak in words that did not inflame him, words that sounded small. Kellogg laughed a short bark. "You're in cuffs, and you're worried about coffee." Emily's voice remained level. "I'm diabetic." It was not true. It was not meant to be. It was a shield, a reason that forced him to consider medical liability. Her mind moved like it moved in the ER, scanning for the lever that worked in the situation. Kellogg's laughter stopped. His eyes narrowed. He looked her over as if he could see into her blood. "You trying to lie to me?" Emily did not answer. Kellogg stared at her for a moment. Then he snatched the coffee cup off her roof, took a dramatic sip, and grimaced. "This tastes like dirt," he said, and tossed it into the gravel. The cup hit and rolled, spilling coffee into the dust. The dark liquid soaked into the ground and vanished. Emily watched it without changing her face. Something inside her tightened anyway. It was not the coffee, it was the pleasure he took in taking. Kellogg pushed her into the back seat. The vinyl was cold under her thighs. The door shut with a heavy final sound. The metal grate between the front and back seats turned the cruiser into a cage. Emily's breath fogged faintly in the air. The cuffs dug into her skin with each movement. Kellogg returned to her car, leaving her in the pulsing lights. He opened doors, leaned in, pulled out items one by one. He set her license on the hood. He spread her belongings like a display. He made it look like evidence. Emily sat still and watched through the glass. She did not slam her feet. She did not kick the door. She did not pound the window. She kept her breathing slow and her posture upright, as if she were waiting for a doctor to finish explaining test results. Kellogg wrote on his clipboard pen, moving with exaggerated slowness. He paused, often glancing back at her as if checking her for the right kind of misery. When he did not see it, his mouth tightened. A pickup truck pulled into the lot, tires crunching. The driver stepped out, a man in work boots and a faded jacket. He reached for the pump handle, then froze when he saw the cruiser lights and the woman in cuffs in the back seat. His eyes flicked to Kellogg. Recognition passed across his face like a shadow. He turned his body away from the cruiser, facing the pump with an intensity that did not match gasoline. He did not look back. Emily saw the movement and understood it without needing words. She had seen that kind of fear in plenty of places. Fear that made decent people pretend they were blind. Inside the store, Josh moved like he wanted to vanish. He pretended to check the lottery display. He pretended to adjust a shelf of chips. He kept his back turned, but his shoulders were rigid, listening. Kellogg returned to the cruiser and opened the front door. He sat down. The dashboard lights painted his face in dull green. He did not start the engine. He wrote. Emily watched the top of his head, the angle of his shoulders. She listened to the pen scratch on paper. That sound was familiar too, not from traffic stops but from medical charts where words became reality in a system. What you wrote mattered. What you wrote could bury someone. Kellogg glanced back at her in the rearview mirror. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. He smiled. You resisting, he called back, voice loud enough for the pickup driver to hear if he dared. Emily did not answer. Kellogg's smile widened as if silence pleased him. He leaned toward his clipboard and wrote more. Emily shifted her wrists slightly to relieve pressure. The cuffs scraped against her skin. A sharp sting, she ignored it. She focused on details, the angle of the car door, the distance to the store, the position of the pumps, the fact that the nearest streetlight was the station's own flickering canopy, the fact that there were no other cars on the highway at that moment. She imagined a map in her mind, not for escape, for orientation. You cannot think well in a place you do not understand. Kellogg spoke again without turning around. You been drinking tonight, Emily? No, she said. He laughed softly. Sure. I came from work, Emily said. You can verify. Kellogg clicked his pen. You know what I can verify? He turned in his seat slightly, looking back at her like a man addressing an audience. That you got an attitude problem. Emily kept her voice calm. I'm tired. You keep saying that. Kellogg said. Tired makes people sloppy. Emily did not respond. Kellogg stared at her through the mirror. You got anyone waiting for you? Emily's throat tightened. The question was not about safety. It was about isolation. Yes, she said, and it was true in the simplest sense. She had a bed. She had a home. She had a life that continued even if no one was watching. Kellogg's gaze stayed on her boyfriend. No. Husband. No. He made a sound like disapproval, so nobody. Emily met his eyes in the mirror steady. I didn't say that. Kellogg's smile disappeared. His jaw worked. He turned back around sharply and slammed his clipboard onto the steering wheel. You know what he muttered, I'm done playing. He opened his door and stepped out. The wind caught his uniform, slightly tugging at the fabric like the night was curious. He walked to the back door and opened it. He leaned in close enough that Emily could see the pores on his nose, close enough that his breath warmed the air between them. I'm taking you in, he said. Emily's pulse jumped once. On what charge? Kellogg's eyes flashed. Suspicious behavior. Possible intoxication. Resisting. I haven't resisted anything, Emily said, and her voice was soft, controlled. Kellogg's face hardened. You're resisting right now by talking. Emily let the words fall away. Silence returned to her mouth like a shield. Kellogg stared at her, waiting for a reaction, then stepped back and shut the door with a sharp slap of metal. He returned to his own door. He sat down. He picked up the radio mic. Dispatch Unit 314, he said. A female voice answered slightly tinny through the speaker. Go ahead, 314. Running a subject, Kellogg said, and he gave Emily's information. Emily listened to the numbers and letters roll off his tongue. She listened to the way he spoke like he was reading from a script he had practiced many times. The system did not require him to be kind. It required him to sound certain. Dispatch came back with a neutral tone. Valid, no warrants. Kellogg made a disappointed sound. Copy. He set the radio down and looked back in the mirror again. No warrants, he repeated, like it should have been otherwise. Emily said nothing. The pickup driver finished pumping. He replaced the nozzle, still not looking toward the cruiser. He got into his truck and drove away without ever turning his head. The lot returned to emptiness. Kellogg's fingers tapped the steering wheel in a restless rhythm. He wrote more. He tore a form from a pad and smoothed it on the dashboard, pressing hard as if he could imprint guilt into the paper. Emily's wrists ached. Her shoulders began to burn from the angle of the cuffs. She adjusted again, small movement, careful not to look like a struggle. Kellogg saw it anyway. He snapped his head around and looked back at her directly, no longer using the mirror. "Stop moving," he said. Emily froze. Kellogg leaned back in his seat, satisfied. He turned his head slightly toward the store window. Josh had finally turned around and was staring openly now, unable to help himself. When Kellogg's eyes landed on him, Josh flinched and looked down, pretending to examine a candy bar display. Kellogg's mouth curved. He liked the fear. It fed him. He turned back forward and exhaled. Emily watched the side of his face. She saw the shape of a man who had been given authority and decided it meant ownership. Her voice remained steady when she spoke again. "Deputy," she said. Kellogg did not answer. "I want to make a phone call," Emily said. Kellogg laughed a genuine laugh this time, like she had offered entertainment. He shook his head and stared forward, still smiling. "You get your call when I say," he replied. Emily's throat tightened slightly. She kept her face smooth. "I'm asking for one call." Kellogg's smile faded into something sharper. "You don't get to ask me for anything." Emily looked out the window at the dark highway. There were no headlights, just emptiness. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the sound steady and irritating like a fly you could not swat. She tried again, choosing words that would not provoke. "I have a right to one call." Kellogg turned his head, eyes narrowing. "You got a right to shut your mouth. That's what you got." Emily fell silent. The minutes moved slowly. Cold crept deeper into the cruiser. The air smelled faintly of plastic and old sweat. Kellogg scrolled on his phone, now thumb moving. He chuckled at something on the screen as if Emily were not there. Emily stared at the highway. She focused on breath. She focused on counting the seconds between gusts of wind. She watched the canopy lights flicker 1, 2, then steady again. She listened to the distant whoosh of another semi-truck, passing, the sound growing, then fading like a tide. Her mind did what it always did in crisis. It organized. She noted that Kellogg had not called for backup. She noted that he had not performed a sobriety test. She noted that he had not read her any rights. She noted that he had created a situation where no one could see inside the cruiser clearly, only the flashing lights and the suggestion of a captive silhouette. She noted the camera in the store blinking red. She noted Josh's fear. She noted the absence of other witnesses. Kellogg tapped his phone again, then checked his watch. He sighed, exaggerated, like he was bored. He twisted in his seat and looked back at her again. "So who you calling?" Emily did not answer. Kellogg's eyes glittered with irritation. "Come on," he said. "Give me something. You calling your nurse friends? You gonna cry to them about the mean deputy?" Emily's jaw tightened once. She let it go. Kellogg leaned back. "Or maybe you got some lawyer on speed dial. Some city boy thinks he can call me and tell me I'm wrong." Emily's eyes stayed on the highway. Silence held. Kellogg's irritation grew visible in the way his knee bounced. He wanted her to argue. He wanted her to beg. He wanted her to give him a reason that sounded like justification. Emily gave him nothing. He stared at her for a long moment, then turned forward sharply and muttered unbelievable. He grabbed the radio mic again. "Dispatch. Go ahead, 314. Kellogg's voice shifted into casual annoyance. "You got the chief up?" There was a brief pause, like dispatch was choosing her words. "Chief's asleep. Do you need him?" Kellogg's eyes flicked to Emily in the mirror. "No," he said, "not yet." He set the mic down and exhaled. He stared forward, tapping his fingers. Emily saw the moment his confidence began to itch. Not fear. Not yet. Just irritation that the game was not playing the way he liked. The store door chimed softly. Josh stepped outside, moving cautiously, hands visible like he was approaching a wild animal. He walked only as far as the doorway and stopped. The light from inside framed him like a cutout. Deputy Josh called, voice thin. Kellogg didn't move. He didn't even turn his head. He spoke loudly enough to carry. "Go inside." Josh froze. Your receipt printer. It's been acting up, and I thought you might want the—" "Go inside," Kellogg repeated harder. Josh swallowed and retreated without another word, the door chiming again as it shut. Emily watched Josh disappear. She felt the same frustration she felt in the hospital when someone with authority used it to silence instead of protect. She kept her face still. Kellogg leaned his head back against the seat and closed his eyes briefly as if savoring the control. Then he opened them and checked his watch again. He muttered, "Fine." He turned around and looked directly at Emily. "You want your phone call so bad?" Emily met his gaze without flinching. "Yes." Kellogg's mouth twisted. "One call," he said. "That's it, and you keep it short." Emily nodded. Kellogg stared at her a moment longer, trying to read her face, trying to locate the fear he assumed had to be there. When he didn't find it, his eyes hardened. He opened his door and stepped out into the night, slamming it a bit too hard. The wind tugged at his pant leg. The lights continued pulsing. He walked around to the back door and opened it. Cold air rushed in. "Turn," he ordered. Emily turned slightly, bringing her cuffed hands closer to the door opening. Kellogg reached in with the key, unlocking one cuff. The metal loosened and bit again as he shifted it. He grabbed her wrists and forced her hands around front, recuffing her with a sharp click that made her wince despite herself. The cuffs sat awkwardly now, tighter than necessary. Kellogg watched her reaction with satisfaction. He pulled his phone from his pocket and held it just out of her reach for a beat, like he was feeding a dog a treat. "Don't try anything stupid," he said, "and I'm listening to every word." Emily's fingers were stiff from cold and pressure. She flexed them once, then held her hand steady. Kellogg placed the phone into her cuffed grip. The screen glowed against her palms, bright and clean in the dirty night. "Go on," he said, voice dripping with mock generosity. "Call whoever you think can help you." Emily's cuffed hands closed around the phone like it was warmer than the air. The screen light washed her knuckles pale, and for a moment the only sound was the buzz of the canopy lights and Kellogg's breathing steady with satisfaction. He hovered close enough that she could feel his impatience in the space between them. "Put it on speaker," he said. Emily lifted her eyes to his. "No." His smile tightened. "Excuse me." "I'm making one call," Emily said. Her voice stayed even. "I'm not putting it on speaker." Kellogg stared at her, weighing whether to take the phone back and start the punishment over. Then he leaned in so near she could smell tobacco and cheap coffee on his breath. "I'll be listening anyway," he said. "Don't get cute." Emily looked down at the screen again. No contacts list, no scrolling, no hesitation. Her thumbs moved with quiet certainty, tapping numbers like she was dialing a code on a door that only opened for the right hands. Kellogg watched. He was still amused at first, still sure. Then the first 3 digits appeared and the amusement faltered just a fraction. "You memorized it," he muttered. Emily did not answer. She kept dialing. On the screen, a Washington, D.C. area code glowed for a beat before the rest of the digits filled in. Kellogg's eyes narrowed. "Who is that?" he asked, too casual, like he did not care. Emily's thumbs stopped. She held the phone steady, breath-slow wrists aching where metal pressed into skin. "It's a number I hoped I'd never use," she said. Kellogg scoffed. "A number you hope you never use. What is this, some dramatic nurse thing?" Emily did not look up. She pressed call. The ringing tone sounded small in the open desert, swallowed by wind and electricity, but it was there. 1 ring, 2. In that narrow space, the gas station vanished from her mind the way a hallway disappears when a trauma bay door swings open. Memory came in fragments sharp and bright. A different kind of light, not fluorescent. A white sun over dust. A different kind of smell, not antiseptic. Burnt fuel, hot metal sweat trapped under gear. A different kind of silence. Not the empty quiet of Nevada, but the loaded pause before something breaks. She had been 19 when she signed the papers. The recruiter had talked about college money and job training and seeing the world. Emily heard none of that clearly. What she heard was the promise of order, of belonging to something that did not ask if you felt ready. Boot camp had been a furnace. It burned away hesitation, comfort, the soft parts of her voice. It built a new kind of quiet inside her, the kind that did not shake when people yelled. The day she earned the title Marine, she stood in formation with her shoulders burning and her jaw clenched. The drill instructor paced in front of them like a storm that had learned to walk. "Look at you," he barked. "You think you're tough now." Emily kept her eyes forward. "You're not tough," he said. "You're trained, and training can break if you let it." She remembered the heat, the grit on her lips, the weight of the words. Training can break if you let it. The ringing tone continued. 3rd ring. Her mind slid again deeper to a night that never left her. Helmand Province. A moon that looked too bright over a place that wanted to stay hidden. Their convoy crawled down a dirt road that did not belong to them. The air was still until it was not. The blast came under the 2nd vehicle. A sudden punch of sound and fire sand thrown into the sky like it had been kicked by a giant. The shockwave rattled teeth. The world went white and then red. Someone screamed. Someone swore. Radio chatter exploded. Emily had been riding 3rd, not at the front, not the hero spot. She was there because she was useful, because she could patch holes and keep people breathing while the rest of the team focused on threats. The driver of the 2nd vehicle stumbled out with his arm hanging wrong. The gunner was down, helmet, cracked, blood running into his eyes. Emily hit the ground running without thinking. Dust filled her mouth. She dropped to her knees beside the gunner and pressed her fingers into his neck, searching for a pulse under the chaos. "Stay with me," she said, voice low and firm, like she was speaking to someone who needed to hear certainty more than comfort. "Open your eyes." His gaze flickered. His lips moved, but no sound came out. A Marine behind her shouted, "We got contact 10 o'clock." Shots snapped in the distance. Sharp, ugly pops. The air around them changed thick with danger. Emily did not lift her head. Her hands moved. She pressed gauze to the gunner's scalp, then slid her palm to the side of his head, holding pressure. "Tourniquet on the driver," someone yelled. Emily glanced once, saw the driver's arm bleeding, saw the pale look on his face. She pointed without looking away from her patient. "High and tight," she said. "Mark the time." A radio crackled near her ear. "We need status. We need status." Emily took the mic with her free hand. "2 wounded," she said. "1 head injury, 1 arterial bleed. We need evac." "Negative," the voice replied. "Bird is 20 out. 20 minutes could be a lifetime." Emily looked down at the gunner's eyes. 20, she murmured. "You hear me. You give me 20. His eyes blinked slowly, heavy. She kept pressure. She counted his breaths. She controlled the little world she could touch with her hands while everything else tried to fall apart. That had been her job. Control what you can. Ignore what you cannot. The ringing tone in Kellogg's phone continued steady, indifferent. 4th ring. Emily's memory shifted again. Not convoy, not road, a compound. They had called it a safe house, but nothing in Helmand was truly safe. The walls were mud brick thick and crumbling at the edges. Inside, the air smelled of stale smoke and damp fabric. Their interpreter had been restless eyes darting to corners like he could see threats hiding in shadows. Intel said the area was clear. Intel was wrong. The first sign was the dog. A low growl outside, then silence. Then footsteps. Too many. Too coordinated. Emily was in the back room checking supplies, her hands sorting sterile packets by touch in dim light when the radio hissed. "Movement," a Marine whispered. "We got movement." The next sound was a muffled thud, then another. The kind of sound that meant bodies were hitting the ground. The door to the back room swung open, and a man stepped inside without knocking, his weapon raised. Emily did not scream. She did not freeze. She shifted her wait eyes, scanning for cover, for exits, for angles. The man's eyes were hard. His finger tightened on the trigger. A shot cracked from the hallway, and the man jerked, dropping like his strings had been cut. Emily did not look away. She stepped over him and moved into the hallway. 2 Marines were down by the front room. One held his arm, blood running between his fingers. The other was pressed against the wall, face pale, eyes wide. "Colonel's hit," someone shouted. Emily's stomach dropped. She moved fast, boots scraping against concrete. The front door was half blown off its hinges. The night outside was loud with gunfire, with shouting, with the sudden ugliness of compromised intel. Colonel Daniel Hargrove was near the doorway, half on his side, one leg twisted under him. Shrapnel had torn through his thigh. Blood soaked his pant leg and pooled on the floor in a dark, spreading stain. He looked up at Emily with clear eyes, even in pain. He did not ask if he would be okay. He did not waste breath on fear. "Go," he said, voice tight. "Get out." Emily crouched beside him and pressed her hands to the wound. Heat and wetness spread under her palms. "You're bleeding out," she said. Hargrove's jaw clenched. "I know." Outside, an explosion rattled the walls. Dust shook from the ceiling. Emily looked at the hallway behind her. A Marine was pinned down behind a table, firing through a broken window. Another dragged their interpreter by the collar, trying to keep him low. There were no clean choices. Emily reached for a tourniquet. Her fingers moved fast, practiced, and she looped it high on Hargrove's thigh above the shredded fabric, above the worst of the bleeding. She tightened until the blood slowed. Hargrove sucked in a breath, eyes closing for half a second. When he opened them again, there was anger there, not at her, but at the situation. At being vulnerable. "Leave it," he ordered. Emily met his gaze. "Not today, sir." The words came out flat, not dramatic, not heroic. Just fact. She slid her arms under his shoulders and pulled. Hargrove was heavier than he looked. Gear and weapon and the weight of a man who had carried responsibility too long. Emily's muscles burned as she dragged him backward, away from the doorway, away from the line of fire. Bullets snapped outside. A round punched into the wall and sent a spray of dirt across the room. Emily did not flinch. She kept pulling teeth, clenched breath, controlled. Hargrove tried to help, pushing with his hands, but his leg buckled. He grimaced. "You're stubborn," he rasped. Emily's voice did not change. "Yes, sir." She dragged him behind a thick section of wall, then pressed her body between him and the doorway like her smaller frame could become cover. She checked the tourniquet again, then ran her fingers along his pulse. "Stay awake," she said. Hargrove's eyes burned into hers. "You should have left me." Emily kept her hands busy opening a sterile package, pressing gauze, checking for more wounds. She spoke without looking up. "You would have done the same," she said. Hargrove let out a sound that might have been a laugh if it did not hurt. Damn right. Extraction came late. Minutes stretched like hours. When the bird finally thumped overhead, sending dust and debris swirling through the compound, Emily moved with a kind of calm that made time feel slower. They carried Hargrove out under cover, rushed to the landing zone, hauled him into the aircraft. Emily climbed in after him, her hands never leaving the wound. When the helicopter lifted, the world dropped away beneath them, and for a moment there was only the roar of rotors and the harsh smell of aviation fuel. Hargrove turned his head toward her, face pale under grime. "You saved my life," he said. Emily kept pressure with her hand and looked at him like he had stated weather. "I did my job, sir." Hargrove's eyes stayed on her. "You did more than that." The memory faded as the ringing tone reached a fifth ring. Emily's eyes were still on Kellogg's phone screen. Her thumbs were still. Her wrists still ached. Her shoulders still burned. But inside, something had shifted the way a soldier shifts weight before a long march, settling into the reality of what must be done. Kellogg leaned closer, impatient now. "No answer," he said. "Guess your big number doesn't work." Emily did not respond. Her breath remained slow. The phone clicked softly. A connection. Static that sounded like a line opening to somewhere far away. Then a voice came through, crisp and awake, like the person on the other end had been sitting upright before the first ring finished. Hargrove. Emily's throat tightened. She felt the old discipline slide over her like armor, smooth and familiar. "Sir?" she said, and the word landed with a gravity that had nothing to do with Kellogg standing there in the dark. There was a pause, not confusion, just a brief moment of focus, like a commander aligning the map in his head. "Emily," Hargrove said. He did not ask how she was. He did not waste time on shock. "Where are you?" Emily looked past Kellogg's shoulder at the highway sign near the edge of the lot, the mile marker she had driven past 1,000 times without caring. "U.S. Route 50, she said, "near Silver Flats, at Juniper Wells." Kellogg's eyes flicked quick and sharp, as if the name meant something to him. The corner of his mouth lifted again, half amused, half defensive. Emily kept speaking calm and precise. "I've been detained by Sagebrush County. The deputy conducted a search without consent. I am in restraints." Hargrove's voice sharpened, the warmth gone. "Are you injured?" "No, sir." "Are you alone?" Emily's eyes shifted briefly to the store window. Josh's face hovered there, pale in fluorescent light. Emily could see his fear like a hand on his throat. "I have a witness inside the station," she said. "Clerk, he is afraid." Kellogg made a sound low and mocking. Telling tales now. Emily did not react. She kept her gaze forward, kept her voice clipped. Hargrove's next words were direct. "Identify the officer." Emily's eyes lifted to Kellogg's nameplate illuminated by the cruiser's pulsing lights. "Deputy Ryan Kellogg," she said, "Sagebrush County Sheriff's Office." Kellogg's smile faltered just for an instant. Hearing his own name spoken into a line that did not feel local changed something in the air. Hargrove did not ask why. He did not ask for context that could wait. His voice dropped into the tone Emily remembered from briefings in places where mistakes got people killed. "Do not resist," he said. "Do not escalate. Maintain composure." "Yes, sir," Emily said. Hargrove's voice softened slightly, not with gentleness but with recognition. "You still steady?" Emily exhaled through her nose the smallest release of tension she had allowed all night. "Yes, sir," she said, "still steady." The silence on the line was brief, like he was already moving while he spoke. "Stay where you are," Hargrove said. "Keep your hands visible. Comply. I will handle the rest." Emily's eyes met Kellogg's for half a second. His face was tighter now. The swagger was still there, but something underneath it had begun to shift like ground that no longer trusted itself. "Yes, sir," Emily said again. Hargrove did not linger. "If he speaks to you, keep it short," he said. "If he threatens you, you do not answer with emotion. You document it in your head." Emily's mouth tightened in something close to a smile, but it did not reach her eyes. Understood. The line clicked. Hargrove was gone. Emily held the phone for a beat longer, screen still lit, her cuffed hand steady. The desert wind moved through the lot like it was searching for weakness. The canopy lights buzzed overhead. The red and blue strobes painted Kellogg's face in alternating colors that made him look less human, more like a mask. Kellogg reached for the phone with a sudden sharpness, not patient now. Emily handed it back without hesitation. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Kellogg stared at the screen as if it might explain itself. His jaw worked. He swallowed once. Then he forced a laugh that sounded thin, like paper rubbing against paper. "Cute," he said. "You call your little military friend." Emily's eyes stayed on his face, calm, unreadable. Kellogg slid the phone into his pocket with a hard motion, as if crushing it into fabric could crush what he had heard. "Get comfortable," he said, and there was a new edge in his voice, one he tried to hide under sarcasm. "This is going to take a while." He stepped back from the open rear door and shut it with a heavy slam. The sound echoed across the lot and faded into the desert. Emily sat on the cold vinyl seat, wrists aching, shoulders stiff. She watched Kellogg walk toward the front of the cruiser, his steps a little faster than before, his posture a little less relaxed. He got in, shut his door, and stared forward. His fingers drummed on the steering wheel. Emily looked out past the canopy lights to the empty highway. The night remained wide and indifferent, the kind of night that let men like Kellogg believe they owned the silence. The radio on Kellogg's dash crackled once, then went quiet again. The speaker hissed faintly, like a breathing thing waiting to speak. The radio hissed like it had a pulse. Deputy Kellogg stared at the dashboard for a long moment, jaw set, eyes narrowed as if he could force the night back into the neat shape he preferred. He shifted in his seat and rolled his shoulders, a small adjustment that pretended to be comfortable. It was not. The pulsing red and blue lights washed the inside of the cruiser in alternating color, turning his hands on the steering wheel into something theatrical, like a man acting out authority for an audience that refused to clap. In the back seat, Emily kept her gaze on the highway. Not the lane lines, not the dark beyond them, but the empty space where headlights should have been if the world were busy enough to provide witnesses. Her wrists ached. The skin beneath the cuffs had begun to swell slightly, making the metal feel sharper. She flexed her fingers once, then went still again. Kellogg leaned forward and tapped the radio as if the faint static offended him. "Dispatch," he said, voice too casual. "Unit 314. The reply came immediately, the same woman's voice, steady but thinner than before. "Go ahead, 314. Kellogg glanced at the rearview mirror, checking whether Emily's face had changed. It had not. "Run her again," he said. "Full history. Anything missed?" A pause. The sound of keys clacking faintly in the background. "We already ran her. Clean. Valid license. No warrants." Kellogg's lips pressed together. "Do it again." The dispatcher did not argue. She did not need to. Emily imagined her sitting alone at a desk under fluorescent light, watching a clock, living inside other people's emergencies without leaving her chair. Emily knew that kind of job. It ate you in a quiet way. Kellogg turned in his seat, slightly looking back at Emily through the mesh barrier. "You got something you want to tell me?" Emily met his gaze without raising her chin. "I told you, I came from work." Kellogg let out a low laugh that carried no humor. "Work." He said it like it was a lie people used when they thought it made them safe. Emily did not respond. Her silence irritated him more than any argument. He pulled his clipboard onto his lap again and began writing. The pen scratched hard, heavy strokes. He paused frequently, glancing at Emily as though he expected the words on paper to reshape her into the story he wanted. She stayed the same. The store's door chimed softly as it opened. Josh stepped out and stopped at the threshold, one hand still on the door handle. The overhead lights from inside framed him, making his face look pale and young. He looked toward the cruiser, then toward the highway, then back at the cruiser. He was deciding something. Emily saw it in his posture, the small tremor in his shoulders. His eyes flicked to Kellogg's silhouette in the front seat and dropped quickly like his gaze had been slapped. He stayed on the threshold. He did not take a step into the lot. Kellogg noticed him through the side mirror and made a dismissive gesture with his hand, a flick, as if shooing a stray animal. Josh retreated inside. The door chimed again. The sound was lonely in the open night. Emily watched the reflection of Josh's movement in the cruiser window and felt a familiar frustration, the same tightness she felt when a patient's family wanted to speak up but did not know how. Fear made people small. Fear made people quiet. Fear made them complicit without ever meaning to be. Kellogg finished a page of paperwork and slapped the clipboard lightly against the steering wheel. He looked at his watch, then forward, then back into the mirror again. "Who was that?" he asked, voice sharp. Emily kept her eyes on the highway. "His name is Hargrove." Kellogg's mouth twisted. "That's not an answer." "It is," Emily said. Kellogg leaned forward slightly, narrowing his eyes. "He military." "Yes." Kellogg snorted. "So you got some army boyfriend." Emily's expression stayed calm, but her tone cooled subtle and controlled. "He is not my boyfriend." Kellogg's eyes flicked a fast spark of irritation. "You think that matters." Emily did not speak. Her silence returned precise and deliberate. Kellogg shifted again in his seat. He took out his phone, checked the screen, then shoved it back into his pocket as if the device irritated him for existing. He stared through the windshield at the empty pump island. His breathing had changed. It was still steady, but the rhythm was tighter, like he was holding something in his chest. Dispatch came back on the radio. 314. Kellogg grabbed the mic too fast. "Yeah." The dispatcher hesitated, and that hesitation was a crack in the night. "She's clean," she said. "No history, no priors, no flags." Kellogg's jaw flexed. No flags. No dispatch repeated. Nothing. Kellogg exhaled hard through his nose. He set the mic down with controlled force and stared ahead. Emily listened. She could hear the shift in the dispatcher's voice. The woman was unsettled. Not because Emily was detained. People were detained all the time. She was unsettled because Kellogg was pushing too hard without cause, and she was now part of it. Kellogg turned his head slightly and spoke without looking back. "You always this quiet," Emily answered with the truth he least wanted. "Only when it helps." Kellogg went still for half a second. Then he laughed once short and sharp. "You think you're clever." Emily did not respond. The canopy lights flickered again, buzzing louder for a moment. The night wind pushed sand across the gravel in thin streams. The highway remained empty. The desert did not care about their small drama. Kellogg opened his door and stepped out, slamming it with a little too much force. He walked around to Emily's car and shone his flashlight inside again, sweeping it over the empty seats, the scattered items on the hood, the glove box still hanging open. He leaned in and sniffed the air as if he could smell guilt. He looked up at the security camera mounted under the station's canopy and stared at it for a beat. The camera's tiny red light blinked steadily. Kellogg's eyes narrowed, then he looked away. Emily watched him from the back seat through glass that caught reflections and turned the world slightly unreal. She watched the way he moved, the way he squared his shoulders as though anyone were judging him. She realized he was judging himself now, measuring whether the line he was crossing would hold his weight. He returned to the cruiser and got in. He did not look back at her right away. He stared forward and tapped his fingers against the steering wheel again. Then the radio crackled. This time the dispatcher's voice sounded different. Not nervous exactly. More careful. Like she was choosing each word as if it might be recorded. "Unit 314, she said. Kellogg snatched the mic. "Go ahead." "We have an inquiry," dispatch said. "Federal." Kellogg froze so completely that Emily saw it even through the mesh. "Say that again," Kellogg replied, and the confidence in his voice thinned. There was a pause. Federal Inquiry Dispatch repeated. "They are asking for your location and the status of your detainee." Kellogg's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, quick sharp. Emily's face did not change. "That's not possible," Kellogg said. "That's what I have," dispatch replied. Kellogg swallowed. He tried to sound bored. "Who called?" "Someone from Washington," dispatch said. "They contacted the chief's personal number. The chief is calling back." Kellogg's mouth tightened. "And what did you tell them?" "I told them we were verifying," dispatch said. "They asked what charges you have." Kellogg's laugh came out forced hollow. "Charges." He glanced back at Emily again, eyes narrowing as if she had done something illegal by existing. "It's a routine stop." Dispatch hesitated. They sounded like they wanted specifics. Kellogg's voice sharpened. "Tell them DUI investigation. Suspicious behavior. That's it. They don't have jurisdiction. The dispatcher did not respond right away. Emily could hear the quiet on the line, the pause where a person decides whether to say what they think is true. Finally, dispatch said copy. Kellogg set the mic down and stared ahead. His fingers were still now. The tapping had stopped. Emily sat very still, her breath slow. Her wrists hurt. The ache was now constant. It did not matter. She kept her posture controlled. She kept her eyes forward. Kellogg reached for his clipboard again, but his hand hesitated just above it, as if the paper no longer gave him comfort. He grabbed it anyway and began to write again, pen pressing too hard. The scratches sounded harsher. Outside, Josh opened the store door again and stepped out. He stayed closer to the entrance this time, hovering just inside the light. His eyes moved from the cruiser to the highway and back, fast, anxious. Emily saw him glance at the canopy camera again. His gaze lingered a fraction longer. Then he looked down as if ashamed of looking at all. Kellogg leaned back in his seat and spoke without turning around. "You set this up." Emily's voice was calm. "I asked for one call." Kellogg's jaw worked. "You called Washington. You trying to make me look bad." Emily did not answer right away. She chose her words carefully. "You did not need my help to look bad." Kellogg twisted around in his seat, eyes flaring. For a moment, the mask cracked and something raw showed through. Anger, yes, but also the fear of losing control. He stared at her, breathing hard. Then he turned back forward with sudden jerky movement, as if looking at her too long made him feel exposed. He grabbed the radio mic again. "Dispatch. Go ahead." Kellogg's voice dropped into a different tone, one he used when he wanted to sound official. "Get me Sergeant Haynes." There was a pause. "Sergeant is off duty. Wake him." Kellogg snapped. Silence. Then dispatch, "Careful. I can try." Kellogg set the mic down and stared forward. His shoulders were tight, posture rigid. The man who had been amused now looked like someone trying to keep a lid on boiling water. Emily listened to the faint sounds outside, the buzz of the canopy lights, the distant whoosh of wind. She imagined Hargrove on the other end of that call. The man's voice crisp as a blade, his mind already moving through steps Emily did not need to know. She did not comfort herself with fantasies of rescue. She comforted herself with discipline. In her head she documented everything. The reason given for the stop. None. The search. Without consent. The items thrown on the ground. The coffee cup dumped into gravel. The accusations. Swerving. Intoxication. Resisting by talking. The witnesses. Clerk inside. Pickup driver who left. The camera on the ceiling, blinking. The deputy's name and unit. She held those facts like she held pressure on a wound. Firm, steady, unshaken by the noise around them. Inside the store, Josh moved behind the counter with a stiff, mechanical energy. He picked up a handful of the spilled items that had skittered toward the store entrance when Kellogg tossed Emily's bag. He did it slowly, like he was afraid the act itself might be punished. He set the items just inside the doorway on the floor, then retreated again. Kellogg did not notice. Or he pretended not to. Emily's eyes stung slightly from the lingering glare of lights. Her body wanted sleep. Her mind refused it. She thought about St. Agnes, about the child with pneumonia, about the father's hands trembling as he asked how much it would cost to keep his child alive. She thought about how a person could be crushed without anyone touching them, crushed by systems, by power, by indifference. Kellogg shifted again, then started the engine. The hum filled the cruiser. For a second, Emily's shoulders tightened automatically. Movement meant change. Kellogg did not pull out. He just let the engine run, as if the sound made him feel less alone. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He froze, then pulled it out and looked down. His face tightened. He glanced back at Emily and then away. He put the phone to his ear. "Yeah." Emily could not hear the voice on the other end, but she watched Kellogg's expression shift. His eyes darted. His jaw clenched. He said, "Yes, sir," once, then understood, and finally I'm handling it." He ended the call and stared at the dashboard, breathing through his nose. Emily's heart beat once, slow and steady. She said nothing. The radio crackled again. "Dispatch 314. Kellogg grabbed the mic too quickly. "Go." "The chief wants your status," dispatch said. "He is on the line with someone from Washington. He says they want to speak with you." Kellogg's face went hard. "No." A pause. He said, "It's urgent." Kellogg swallowed. He looked back at Emily again, and this time his eyes held a question he did not want to ask. Emily met his gaze with the same calm she used with patients when they asked if they were dying. Calm did not mean cruelty. Calm meant control. Kellogg turned forward and spoke into the radio. "Tell the chief I'm busy with an arrest." Dispatch hesitated. "Mike." Kellogg snapped. "Tell him." Dispatch went quiet, then softly, "Copy." Kellogg set the mic down and stared ahead. The engine idled. His knee bounced once, then stopped. He forced his hands to stillness on the steering wheel. Emily watched him in the mirror's reflection. The man was unraveling, but he would not admit it. Not here. Not under lights. Not with a witness in his back seat and a camera overhead. He reached back and pointed a finger at her without looking. "You don't talk again," he said. "Not unless I tell you." Emily's voice stayed steady. "I'm not trying to talk. I'm trying to breathe." Kellogg's finger curled into a fist. He exhaled through his nose, then leaned forward and adjusted the rearview mirror, slightly angling it so he could watch her better. Emily let him. She did not hide her face. She did not glance away. She sat upright with her cuffed hands resting in her lap, palms relaxed, shoulders steady. Time moved. The canopy lights continued their buzz. The wind continued to push across the gravel. The highway remained empty except for the occasional semi-truck that roared past without slowing, as indifferent as the desert itself. Kellogg checked his watch again, then again. He pretended each glance was casual. It was not. His radio crackled with an incoming call. Not dispatch this time. A different tone, a patch through. Kellogg stared at the speaker as if it had grown teeth. Then he pressed the button. "This is Deputy Kellogg," he said. A male voice came through, clipped and formal. "Deputy Kellogg, this is Chief Weller." Kellogg straightened. "Chief." Chief Weller's tone was tight. "What are you doing?" Kellogg's jaw flexed. "Traffic stop. Suspicious driver." The chief did not accept the answer. "You have a call from Washington on my line. They say you have a detainee with Department of Defense concerns." Kellogg went still. Emily watched the back of his neck tense. "That's nonsense," Kellogg said quickly. The chief's voice sharpened. "Is she military?" Kellogg's hand tightened on the mic. He glanced back at Emily, then forward again. "She claims." The chief's breath came through the speaker, audible for a moment. "They want to speak with her." Kellogg's eyes widened slightly. He recovered fast. "She's in cuffs. She's being processed." The chief's voice dropped. "Listen to me. Keep it clean. No games. If they say they're sending someone, you cooperate." Kellogg's pride flared into his voice. "Chief, this is my stop." The chief cut him off. "It is not your stop anymore if federal agencies are involved. Do you understand?" Kellogg's throat moved as he swallowed. "Yes, sir." The chief held the silence for a beat, then added quieter. "Don't make me regret backing you." The line clicked. The call ended. Kellogg stared forward for a long moment, face lit green by the dashboard. His breathing had changed. Shallower, faster. Emily watched him. She saw the shift clearly now. Not anger, not swagger, but the realization that someone above him had noticed the thing he had done in the dark. Kellogg turned his head slightly and spoke through clenched teeth. "You happy?" Emily's voice was calm. "I want to go home." Kellogg laughed once bitter. "Nobody gets what they want out here." Emily looked at the reflection of her own face in the cruiser window. The strobes washed it in color. She looked like someone else. She looked like a stranger. Still, her eyes stayed steady. Kellogg jerked the gear shift, then stopped, leaving it in park. His hands trembled once on the steering wheel small enough that most people would miss it. Emily did not miss it. Inside the store, Josh watched through the window, shoulders stiff. His eyes kept flicking to the canopy camera, then to Kellogg, then to Emily. He looked like someone trying to decide whether to be brave or survive. Kellogg reached for his clipboard again and began to write. His handwriting was rougher now, strokes less confident. He paused in the middle of a line and stared at the paper as if the words had turned against him. Emily's cuffs scraped her skin as she adjusted her hand slightly. The pain was a constant pressure like a tight band around her bones. She focused on breathing through it. In, out, slow. The radio remained quiet for a stretch of time that felt both short and long. Quiet was never empty. Quiet carried tension like a wire stretched tight. Then dispatch returned voice, careful. Unit 314. Kellogg grabbed the mic. Yeah, Sergeant Haynes is on dispatch, said. Kellogg pressed the button. Haynes. A man's voice came through, groggy with sleep, but sharp underneath it. What? Kellogg's tone shifted to defensiveness immediately. I'm on a stop at Juniper Wells. I got a subject female claiming military connections. Dispatch says Federal is calling. Haynes exhaled hard. Why are you calling me? Kellogg tightened his grip. Because they're making noise. Haynes's voice grew sharper. Are you clean on it? A pause. Emily watched Kellogg's shoulders stiffen. Yes, Kellogg snapped. Haynes did not believe him. Did you search her car? Kellogg's eyes flicked to the scattered items on Emily's hood. I had probable cause. Haynes's voice dropped lower. Probable cause is not a feeling, Mike. Kellogg's jaw clenched. She was acting nervous. Haynes made a sound like frustration. Everyone acts nervous when you act like you. Kellogg's face flushed under the shifting lights. He forced a laugh. Whatever. What do I do? Haynes paused. Emily imagined him sitting up in bed, rubbing his face, realizing he was now awake in the middle of the night because Kellogg had done something stupid again. Finally, Haynes said, If Federal is involved, you keep your hands off her. You do not add charges. You do not get cute. You document. You wait. Kellogg's pride surged. I'm not waiting for some suit to tell me how to police my county. Haynes's voice sharpened. You will if you want to keep your job. Kellogg's mouth opened, but no words came out. He stared forward, nostrils flaring. Haynes continued slower, deliberate. Listen. If they ask for her, you give her. If they ask for your report, you give it. If you did something wrong, you stop doing more wrong. You understand? Kellogg's throat worked. Yeah? The sergeant's tone softened a fraction, not kindness, just the tone of a man who had seen this before. Mike, I'm not cleaning this up for you. I'm telling you how to keep it from getting worse. Kellogg's voice dropped. I didn't do anything. Haynes replied flatly. Then you have nothing to fear. The line went quiet. Dispatch cut the patch. Kellogg sat, frozen for a beat, then slammed the radio mic back into its cradle with unnecessary force. He stared forward, breathing through his nose. His hand shook once, then stilled again. Emily stayed quiet. She let the silence do its work. Outside, the canopy lights buzzed. The store's camera blinked. The night wind continued its steady push. The highway remained a dark ribbon with no one on it. Miles away, in a building that did not sleep, Colonel Daniel Hargrove stood in a hallway lit with harsh, clean light. He wore civilian clothes, but his posture belonged to the Marine Corps, straight-backed and precise. His phone was still in his hand screen, dark now. His expression held no panic, only focus. He moved with purpose, not rushing, not hesitating. He stepped into an office where a duty officer looked up, surprised, then alert. Hargrove did not offer a greeting that wasted time. I need a protection protocol activated, he said. Former Marine previously cleared unlawfully detained by local law enforcement. Location is Silver Flats, Nevada. Juniper Wells Station. The duty officer's eyes flicked to a computer screen. Fingers moved fast across a keyboard. Name. Emily, Carter Hargrove said. Staff Sergeant, separated honorably. The duty officer's face tightened as information populated the screen. He did not speak. He did not need to. Hargrove saw the shift in his eyes, the recognition that this was not a standard request. The duty officer reached for a secure phone. He spoke into it in a voice that had been trained to carry urgency without drama. "We have a detention," he said. "Clearance history. Possible security and civil rights issue. Requesting field response." Hargrove stood still listening to the duty officer speak, then stepped closer to the desk. "She is not injured," Hargrove added, "but she is in restraints. The deputy is volatile." The duty officer nodded once, still speaking into the phone, still typing. Hargrove's jaw tightened. He remembered Emily in Hellman dust in her hair, hands steady on his wound, eyes locked on the work as if nothing in the world mattered more than keeping blood inside a body. He remembered the sound of her voice. Not loud, not heroic, just certain. He did not allow himself emotion now. Emotion did not help the chain of command move faster. He allowed himself precision. "Get me a liaison," he said, "and notify the appropriate agency for jurisdiction." The duty officer nodded and made another call. While those calls traveled through systems and desks and people with titles, vehicles began to move. Not with sirens, not with spectacle. With the quiet efficiency of professionals responding to a problem that did not belong to a small town. In a lot outside a federal facility in Nevada, 3 black SUVs sat under pale security lights. Their engines were off, their windows were dark. Their interiors held gear packed neatly and deliberately, as if waiting for hands to claim it. A door opened, then another. Agents stepped out and moved with brisk calm. No wasted motion, no frantic energy, just controlled readiness. A woman in her 40s with dark hair, pulled back eyes, sharp and level, walked toward the vehicles with a tablet in her hand. Special Agent Lauren Pierce did not hurry. She moved like time belonged to her. She glanced at the screen, then to a man beside her. "We have unlawful detention," she said. "We have a deputy with a history." The man nodded, already pulling on a jacket. "Local wants to posture." Pierce's mouth flattened slightly. "Then we do not give them room." She tapped the tablet. "We have a witness inside the station. Clerk, we have canopy cameras. We have the deputy's report in progress. We have his unit number." A younger agent asked any risk of escalation. Pierce's eyes held no doubt always. She stepped to the driver's door of the lead SUV and opened it. She slid into the seat with the calm of someone sitting down to do a job she had done many times. The other agents moved to their vehicles. Engines turned over low and smooth. The SUVs rolled out together, tires crunching softly, then merging onto a road that led toward empty highway. Back at Juniper Wells, Kellogg sat in his cruiser with the engine idling, staring forward. His confidence had shrunk to a posture, a mask he kept trying to hold in place. He checked his watch again and then forced himself to stop, as if noticing time too much made him look guilty. Emily watched the canopy lights. She watched the red and blue reflections in the store window. She watched Josh's silhouette move behind the counter, restless, uncertain. The radio crackled again. "Dispatch, Unit 314. Kellogg's hand tightened around the mic. "Yeah. There's a request," dispatch said. "They want to speak directly with your detainee." Kellogg's eyes widened. His voice rose slightly. "No." A pause. Dispatch's tone turned more careful. "They said it is not optional." Kellogg's mouth opened, then closed. He looked back at Emily, and for a moment the question was clear on his face. "Who are you? What did you do? What did you bring into my night?" Emily met his gaze with steady calm. She did not answer the question he did not ask. Kellogg pressed the mic again. "Tell them she's detained." Dispatch hesitated. "They said they have jurisdiction." Kellogg's voice sharpened, defensive now. "Over my county." Silence on the line. Then dispatch quieter. "Mike, the chief told me to tell you to cooperate." Kellogg froze. The word cooperate hit him like a slap. He lowered the mic slowly and set it down. He stared forward, breathing hard through his nose. Emily's cuffs scraped again as she adjusted her hand slightly in her lap. The movement was small, but Kellogg flinched in his seat as if he heard it. He twisted around, eyes flaring. "Stop moving." Emily's voice was calm. "My hands are swelling." Kellogg's jaw clenched. He turned forward again, forcing himself to breathe. Outside, Josh stepped closer to the window, face drawn, eyes wide. He watched the cruiser, then looked down at the phone on the counter. He picked it up, then set it back down, indecisive. Emily saw it. She wanted to tell him to record, to save himself, to save the truth. She did not. Kellogg was listening to everything, watching everything. The clerk's fear was its own cage. The canopy lights flickered again. The highway remained dark. Then, far out in the distance, a faint glow appeared low on the horizon. Not the harsh bouncing beam of a semi-truck. Lower, smoother, controlled. Emily watched it without changing her face. Kellogg noticed it a beat later. His head lifted slightly like an animal hearing something unfamiliar. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. The glow grew brighter, then split into separate points. Headlights, multiple. They approached with steady speed, not weaving, not slowing, not turning off. The light moved along the highway like it belonged there. Kellogg's breathing quickened. He tried to hold still. He failed. His knee bounced once, then stopped. The headlights turned into the lot. The headlights rolled off the highway and into Juniper Wells with a steadiness that did not belong to tourists or truckers. 3 black SUVs moved as a single shape, silent except for tires on gravel engines, low and controlled. They did not need flashing lights. Their timing and spacing said enough. Deputy Kellogg sat up straighter, hands fixed on the wheel like he could anchor himself to authority by force. The red and blue strobes from his cruiser splashed across the SUV's glossy paint as they arced into the lot and stopped in a smooth semicircle that blocked the exits without anyone shouting an order. For a beat, nothing moved. The canopy lights buzzed. Wind slid across the pumps. The store camera blinked like an indifferent eye. Then doors opened. 6 people stepped out. Dark jackets. Earpieces. Badges clipped where they could be seen. Not local uniforms, not a sheriff's posse, not anyone who needed permission to stand on gravel in the middle of the desert. They moved with the quiet coordination of a team that had rehearsed thousands of arrivals. The woman in front carried herself like time had to keep up with her. Special Agent Lauren Pierce's hair was pulled back, her face calm, her eyes sharp enough to feel like a blade, even from 20 feet away. She walked toward Kellogg's cruiser without hesitation, hands visible, posture neutral. Not threatening, not friendly. Professional. Kellogg opened his door and stepped out fast, almost too fast, as if he could meet the moment head-on before it reached him. His hand drifted toward his belt out of habit, then stopped when he saw the way 2 agents angled their bodies, subtle shifts that made the habit look foolish. Pierce stopped at the edge of the cruiser's headlights and looked at him the way an ER doctor looks at a monitor that has started to scream. "Deputy Ryan Kellogg," she said. It was not a question. Kellogg squared his shoulders. "Who the hell are you?" Pierce held up her badge briefly, not as a flourish, just as a fact. Special Agent Lauren Pierce, Defense Intelligence Agency. Kellogg's face tightened. "This is a county matter. You're out of your lane." Pierce's eyes did not blink. "Your detainee is a former Marine with a documented security history. She reported unlawful detention and a non-consensual search. That constitutes a potential security concern and a civil rights issue. That puts it in my lane." Kellogg's mouth opened, then closed. He tried again. She was swerving. I had probable cause. Pierce turned her head slightly, and an agent beside her stepped forward with a tablet already lit. Pierce did not look at the screen yet. She kept her gaze on Kellogg. "Where is she?" Pierce asked. Kellogg hesitated, and the hesitation was the first honest thing he had done all night. Pierce's voice remained steady. "Open the rear door." Kellogg's jaw flexed. I'm not handing over my detainee to strangers in suits. Pierce's eyes hardened, not with anger, but with certainty. You are not in a position to refuse. Two agents moved past Kellogg as if he were a piece of scenery. Their steps were controlled, not hurried. One went to the rear passenger door. The other scanned the lot, taking in the store, the pumps, the canopy camera, the scattered items on Emily's hood. Kellogg shifted to block them, then stopped when another agent stepped into his path close enough to make the boundary clear without touching him. The rear door opened. Cold air rushed into the cruiser. Emily looked up, face washed in strobe light and canopy glare wrists cuffed in front hands resting in her lap. Her expression was the same one she had worn through the entire stop. Calm, present, steady. An agent crouched to her level voice, gentle in a way that did not feel patronizing. "Ma'am, I'm Agent Russell. Are you injured?" Emily's eyes tracked his face, then his hands, then the badge at his belt. "No," she said quietly. "My wrists are swollen, that's it." "Did the deputy harm you?" Russell asked. Emily paused. The answer lived in a gray space between violence and abuse. Her voice stayed level. "He tightened the cuffs unnecessarily. He searched my car without consent. He threw my belongings on the ground. He delayed my phone call." Russell nodded once. "We are going to remove the restraints. Is that all right?" Emily held her hands out. Russell produced a key. The cuffs clicked open with a sound that seemed to echo louder than it should have. Emily flexed her fingers slowly, rubbing the red marks where metal had pressed into skin. Her hands looked smaller without the steel. She stepped out of the cruiser, carefully. Boots touching gravel shoulders, rolling slightly as circulation returned. The night air hit her face, and for the first time since the lights exploded behind her car, she could breathe without feeling trapped. Pierce approached her, expression still controlled, but her eyes softened by a degree that mattered. "Ms. Carter," Pierce said, "I'm sorry you experienced this. We need a statement from you. Before that, do you need medical attention?" Emily looked at Pierce's face and saw competence there, not pity. She shook her head. "I'm fine." Pierce nodded once. "All right." Behind Pierce, an agent moved toward Emily's car and took photographs of the hood, the scattered gear, the glove box hanging open. Another agent angled a camera toward the canopy camera, documenting its position. A third approached the store door and spoke to Josh through the glass. Josh stared at the scene like he was seeing a different world unfold on top of the one he had been trapped in. He opened the door slowly, eyes wide, and stepped outside. His hands were visible, palms open, like he was afraid habit would convict him. Pierce turned back to Kellogg. Kellogg's posture had shifted. He was still trying to look in control, but his breathing had changed. His eyes kept flicking from Pierce's badge to the SUVs to Emily standing free. "This is ridiculous," Kellogg said. "She made a call. That doesn't mean you can roll up like you own the place." Pierce held his gaze. "You had your chance to make it routine. You chose not to." Kellogg's face flushed. "I was doing my job." Pierce's tone remained even. "Then you will have no problem with us reviewing your body camera, dash camera, and report." Kellogg blinked. "My body cam was off." The words fell into the lot like a dropped weapon. Pierce's eyes narrowed slightly. "Why was your body camera off?" Kellogg swallowed. It malfunctioned. Pierce turned her head slightly. One of her agents stepped forward and spoke into a handheld radio voice, calm. "Requesting evidence preservation on county unit. Seize dash unit if present. Retrieve body camera device from deputy." Kellogg took a step back. "You can't take my equipment." Pierce's voice sharpened just enough to cut. "You are not going to impede a federal investigation." Kellogg tried to gather himself. He pointed at Emily, arms stiff. She was acting nervous. She refused to comply. Emily watched him without speaking. Her calm was a mirror that reflected his chaos. Pierce did not look at Emily. Pierce looked at Kellogg like he was a report that did not balance. "Deputy Pierce said we ran your record while en route." Kellogg's face went rigid. "My record is clean." Pierce raised her tablet slightly, not waving it, just holding it in the air like a chart. 7 complaints in 4 years. Unlawful searches. Unlawful detention. Excessive force. 3 cases with missing internal files. 2 witnesses who report intimidation after filing. Kellogg's eyes widened for a fraction of a second. He recovered fast and scoffed. Those were investigated. Pierce stepped closer by 1 pace. Her voice stayed calm, which made it more dangerous. 3 of those complainants were veterans. 1 Army medic, 1 Navy veteran, 1 former Marine. All reported stops with no probable cause followed by searches. All saw their complaints disappear. Kellogg's jaw worked. Coincidence. Pierce's gaze did not move. Patterns do not need your agreement to exist. A county patrol unit rolled into the lot slower than the SUVs had headlights hesitant. A woman in uniform stepped out, hand near her radio, eyes scanning the scene. Deputy Tessa Monroe looked from Pierce to Kellogg to Emily, and something tight in her face loosened like a muscle she had held for years. She approached carefully, stopping a few feet from Pierce. Pierce acknowledged her with a glance. Deputy Monroe. Monroe's eyebrows lifted. You know me. Pierce's tone stayed measured. I read your department's internal logs. Your name is attached to a suppressed report from 3 years ago. Monroe swallowed, then looked at Kellogg. He stared back at her with the kind of look that tried to pull her back into silence. Monroe broke eye contact with him and faced Pierce again. Her voice was quiet but steady. I can tell you where the files went, she said. Kellogg's head snapped toward her. Monroe. Monroe did not flinch. Stop, she said, and the word came out sharper than she probably expected. She took a breath and steadied. Those complaints didn't vanish by accident. Pierce held her gaze for a beat. We will take your statement, Deputy. Stand by. Kellogg's face changed then. The swagger drained out in quick increments, replaced by something more desperate. You're going to believe her, he said, voice rising. You're going to believe them over me. Pierce answered without heat. We believe evidence. An agent approached Kellogg with a calm, practiced presence. He held a small device in one hand. Deputy Kellogg, you are being detained, pending investigation for civil rights violations under color of law, unlawful detention, and falsification of official reporting. Kellogg stepped back instinctively. Detained. You can't arrest me. The agent's voice remained flat. You can cooperate, or you can complicate. Kellogg's eyes darted around the lot, searching for familiar faces for rescue. The only local faces were Josh behind the store door and Monroe standing with her shoulders squared, and neither looked like salvation. Pierce nodded once, a minimal gesture. The agent stepped in, took Kellogg's wrist, guided his hands behind his back. Kellogg jerked reflexively, then stopped when he realized the movement changed nothing. The cuffs clicked shut. The sound was clean final, and it carried across the empty lot in a way that made Josh's breath catch. Emily watched the cuffs close around Kellogg's wrists, and she did not smile. She simply watched as if documenting a vital sign. Kellogg craned his neck, trying to find her eyes. This is your fault, he spat. Emily met his gaze. Her voice was calm, almost quiet. No, she said. This is your paperwork catching up with you. Kellogg's mouth opened again, but nothing coherent came out. The agent guided him toward one of the SUVs and placed him in the rear seat with controlled force, not rough, not kind, just precise. Pierce turned away from him as if he had already become administrative. She walked toward Emily. Ms. Carter Pierce said we need a statement. We will also need consent to review your vehicle for any classified material concerns. Emily nodded. There is nothing classified in my car. Pierce's eyes held hers. We still document. Emily nodded again. Understood. They moved toward the lead SUV, where the interior light offered a steady glow instead of strobes. Pierce opened the passenger door and gestured. Emily sat on the edge of the seat, shoulders finally loosening. She stared at her hands for a moment, red marks circling her wrists. She rotated them gently, testing the ache. It felt like the aftermath of a long compression cycle, that deep soreness that comes later when adrenaline leaves. Pierce took out a notebook and began in a tone that made questions feel like a checklist. "Time you arrived at the station," Emily answered, "approximately 2:40s. First contact. Cruiser lights activated behind my vehicle as I approached my driver door. Reason given for stop. Swerving on the highway, which is false. Search. Non-consensual. He opened my glove box and center console, then removed my nursing bag and dumped it. Restraints. He cuffed my hands behind my back, then recuffed in front for the phone call. Pierce's pen moved with quick, precise strokes. She did not interrupt. She did not editorialize. As Emily spoke, she could hear voices outside. Agents speaking in low tones. Monroe answering questions. Josh stepping out of the store with his hands trembling as he pointed toward the canopy camera and then toward the corner of the lot where Kellogg's cruiser had parked. Josh's voice carried faintly. "He does this," he said, and the words sounded like they had been trapped in his throat for months. "He does this all the time." Pierce glanced up briefly, then back down. "Witnesses talking," Pierce said. Emily nodded once. She did not feel relief. She felt tired, the kind of tired that lived under skin. Pierce finished the last line and closed the notebook with the controlled finality of a case being secured. "Thank you," Pierce said. "You did the correct thing by making the call." Emily's eyes stayed on her hands. "I made the call because I wanted to go home," she said quietly. Pierce's expression softened slightly. "I understand." Outside, the SUV Monroe stood with an agent pointing toward the store and then toward the highway. Her voice was low but steady. "The Internal Affairs Cabinet has a false back panel," Monroe said. "It's behind the old DUI files. The key is kept in the chief's desk." An agent nodded and wrote it down. The county chief arrived next his vehicle, sliding into the lot like it was late to its own disaster. Chief Weller stepped out, face pale eyes darting from the federal SUVs to Kellogg's cruiser to the agents moving around as if they owned the air. Pierce stepped out of the SUV and walked toward him. Her posture did not change. "Chief Weller Pierce said." The chief tried to hold on to authority. "This is my jurisdiction." Pierce nodded once, a gesture that acknowledged his title without yielding to it. "We are coordinating with the Department of Justice on a civil rights review. Your cooperation is required. We are also preserving evidence tonight." The chief's jaw tightened. "You can't just come in here and take over my department." Pierce's gaze remained level. "You can make this orderly, or you can make it public. Either way, it proceeds." The chief stared at her, then glanced at Kellogg's cruiser, at the scattered nursing gear on the hood of Emily's car, at the canopy camera blinking above. His shoulders sagged slightly, a man realizing the story he thought he controlled had been recorded by reality. He looked at Monroe, and Monroe held his gaze without blinking. Something passed between them that did not need words. Pierce turned back toward Emily's car. The stethoscope lay on the gravel near the pump base. A blood pressure cuff was half covered in dust. A saline flush packet was crushed under a shoe print. The scene looked like a small violence, quiet but intimate. Josh approached slowly, hands full of what he had gathered, eyes careful. "Ma'am," he said to Emily, voice shaking. "I picked up what I could. I'm sorry, I didn't know what to do." Emily stepped out of the SUV and walked toward him. She took the items gently, like she was receiving a patient's belongings after surgery. "You did what you could," she said. Josh's eyes flicked toward the SUV where Kellogg sat. Josh began, then swallowed. "He told me if I talked to anyone, he'd shut this place down." Emily nodded once. "Tell them everything you saw," she said. Josh looked at her, surprise in his face. "I am," he said, and it came out like a confession and a decision at the same time. Emily knelt and picked up her stethoscope. Dust coated the tubing. She wiped it with her sleeve. The act was small, but it grounded her. Pierce approached. "We can take you to a hotel," Pierce said, "or drive you home." Emily looked at her car holder. paint-faded scrapes on the bumper, the kind of car that did not impress anyone. She looked at the highway beyond black and wide. "I'll drive myself," Emily said. Pierce studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, an agent will follow you until you reach town, just in case." Emily did not argue. She collected the remaining items, gathering them with the same calm she used at the end of a trauma when the room finally quieted and you had to clean up the aftermath. She put her nursing bag on the passenger seat. She closed the glove box. She set her license and registration back where they belonged. Her coffee cup was gone, the spilled coffee a dark stain on gravel that was already drying. She looked once toward the SUV holding Kellogg. Through the window, she could see the outline of his head, rigid facing forward, as if refusing to look at the world that had stopped fearing him. Emily did not stare long. She got into her car and shut the door. The interior felt suddenly private again, the steering wheel familiar under her palms. She started the engine. The old sedan hummed reliable in its plainness. Pierce stood near the lot's edge, watching. Josh stood by the store door, eyes still wide, as if he could not believe he had spoken aloud. Monroe stood with an agent's shoulders-squared face set into a calm that looked like someone finally putting weight down after carrying it too long. Emily backed out slowly. An SUV pulled out behind her headlights, steady, not crowding, just present. She turned onto the highway and let the darkness swallow the gas station's flickering light behind her. The red and blue strobes faded in the rearview mirror until they were only distant color, then nothing. The road stretched ahead silent and straight. Emily rolled her window down a crack. Cold, desert air rushed in. It smelled like dust and sage and emptiness. It smelled like freedom not as a concept but as a physical thing. Her wrists throbbed faintly on the steering wheel. She rotated them once, then steadied her hands at 10 and 2 out of habit. Her breathing slowed. One inhale, then one exhale, the rhythm returning. She drove toward Silver Flats without music, without tears, without speech. The stars above were sharp and indifferent, and the highway line slid beneath her headlights like a promise that the night could keep moving forward, even after it tried to stop her.